Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
I've been working with ibogaine for the past 10 years now. I am an anthropologist by training, also have a background in chemistry. Was a chemistry grad student until I experienced psychedelics myself and decided that I didn't want to do animal research anymore, so I completely switched fields and went into anthropology. The main thing I've done with ibogaine is to do an observational outcome study, which was funded by MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. Say that, it was so intense, it's just so all-encompassing that you couldn't notice withdrawal symptoms during that time. But it does open up people to having insights about the trauma or about the roots of their addiction. And that is something that, with ongoing psychotherapy or integration of work, post-treatment, that's something that people can work with.
What up, y'all? This is Airey Bros Radio, and this is episode 35 with Dr. Thomas Kingsley Brown. You ready, Prince?
Yes, sir, Richie Rich. I am super stoked and super ready to give the Airey Bros Radio masses Dr. Thomas Kingsley Brown and hip them to ibogaine and ibogaine treatment.
Yeah, it's 2019, and at this point, everyone in some way, shape, or form has been touched or impacted by someone close to them with some sort of opiate disorder. And a lot of people aren't aware of what iboga or ibogaine is. And so we're going to hip you to that today.
Yeah, this is one of those mystical medicines you might hear about on HBO or watching 2020 or one of those. Vice. And watching one of those shows, and you might not think that something that comes from the earth can be this powerful and help people get off opiates. I've had firsthand experience with iboga, not for opiate use, but just in general, and I know the impact it can have on a person. So having the opportunity to get Dr. Thomas Kingsley Brown on the podcast and have him hip the masses to what iboga and ibogaine is about and what it can do and how it can help people, and to come from an educated background, just not a bunch of dudes in their basement messing around with this. They've had clinical studies, and he's here to hip the masses to what the benefits are of iboga.
Yeah, Dr. Brown started his research in 2009, and then in 2010 started working with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. He is a chemist. He has a BS and a master's in chemistry from the University of Pittsburgh, and then, as he says in the episode, kind of got sick of doing research on animals, lab testing and stuff, and went into anthropology and has a Ph.D. from the University of California in San Diego in anthropology. And as we find out in this episode, Dr. Brown has long had an interest in altered states of consciousness and life-changing experiences. So really awesome conversation. He goes deep dives into the early goings of ibogaine in the United States and some of the people that he is familiar with or has worked with and some of their experiences. So to hear his experiences, to have the episode that we had with Dr. Wachholz a while back, and then to hear how they're combating this and researching this. And I think it's just important to let people know that this is something that's available. It's not available here in the United States, but it's available in different parts of the world, not too far from here. And it may be something, if you're friends or family are dealing with this and are struggling and have been in and out of rehabs and can't really find something to kick this, look into ibogaine, look into ibogaine research, look into Dr. Kingsley Brown, listen to this conversation, and take some notes, and maybe reach out to that loved one that's struggling with this right now.
Yeah, you got options. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and that's what we're here to do today. We're here to show you those options, give you Dr. Thomas Kingsley Brown, educate yourself on this matter, how you can use a different way to get there, to get that healthy state of mind, to get off those opiates. There's more than one way, and that's what we're going to present you today.
And I think the biggest thing, too, is that whether you go the traditional route, whether you go down to Costa Rica or Mexico or the Netherlands to work with ibogaine, maybe even go find a Bwiti shaman in Africa, and you use the iboga root bark, the common reoccurring theme with all these people that we're having on when we're talking about psychedelics and psychedelic experiences is the reintegration on the back end of this. It's none of this stuff is a quick fix. You know, it may be, you hear people talk about, oh, it's 10 years of psychotherapy in a few hours, but in my experiences, it's just a little nugget to work with. You have to do the work on the back end, whether you're going to do this sort of stuff or you're going the traditional route to a 28-day rehab. If you're not committed to doing the work on the back end, more than likely you're going to relapse. It doesn't really matter. So again, it's up to you. These tools are here to help you and show you some different things, but if you're not committed to doing the work, it's not going to happen. And that's the same thing whether it's diet and exercise, health and wellness, starting something new. If you're not committed to doing the work, it's probably not going to work.
There is no magic pill, and I found that out firsthand with iboga. It took me a while to kind of come back around and start reintegrating things I learned from that experience. And Dr. Brown goes into detail about how hard the reintegration is for people who go down to Mexico because, you know, they're outside the United States. They might only have a week or two to kind of go down there. You know, there's no facilities in the United States where people can work on the reintegration, so you're kind of out there on your own trying to figure out. So it's good to have Dr. Brown on here to kind of let everyone know what they got going on, to kind of let the masses know that there's something out there like this, and if we made it legal, or if there was those ways in the United States, it might be a little bit easier for someone to get that reintegration. But like you said, Richie, if you ain't willing to do the work on the back end, if you're not thinking about that work on the back end before you even go, this might not be the route for you.
No, it may not be, but it might be. And I think if you, with anything, you put the work in, you're going to get the results. So this can help you. They've had remarkable results with kind of people bypassing the withdrawals. And we get into that a little bit. And I think it's just, as I talked about, the possibility that the experience is just so intense that you can't even focus or think about the withdrawals or the symptoms. You're in it so deep, and even on with like ayahuasca, you're in this experience so deep. But with the ibogaine experience, it lasts for 24, 36 hours. So that's usually that roughest part of those withdrawals where people think, oh my God, I'm going to die if I don't get my fix. And then they go and they relapse. So it's with this experience that a 24 to 36 hour window where you're in it, you don't have time to worry about your withdrawals.
No, and the pain is so real, and you're in it in that moment, like you said. And, you know, to me, the only thing I can relate it to is it just brought me, like, right into a wrestle and cut and weight session for 48 hours. That feeling, you know, you're just in it, and you can't get over what's going on, what's playing on that wheel until you accept that, and then you can kind of ride the wheel. The longer you try to fight this kind of thing, the longer it just keeps slapping you slapping you in the face to kind of open up to it. And I think that's something that iboga and ibogaine does, is kind of opens up those doors to those things you're kind of shutting off and kind of ignoring. It won't let you ignore that. So I think that's another thing where people who are really caught up in addiction, it's kind of going to open that window whether you want to see it or not.
Yeah, and with all psychedelics, part of the experience is surrendering to the experience. If you're not willing to surrender to the experience and let go to the experience, and this can be true with anything in life, really, you're not going to get the most out of it. So, yeah, I think having no expectations, letting go to the experience, and then having a clear-cut reintegration plan, putting all those things together, maximizing this experience, you're going to start to see more and more people going this route to kick this habit or kick these habits.
100, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're putting this out, to kind of help people who don't have that route, give them an option. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, kind of open you up to the options that you have out there. And I think we're getting really excited just going over this podcast because we know the great nuggets that are in this podcast. So with that said, Rich, you ready to give it to him?
Yo, this is Airey Bros Radio. This is episode 35 with Dr. Thomas Kingsley Brown. Sit back, relax, enjoy today's episode of Airey Bros Radio. Much love, namaste, from the boys of 1512. All right, Tom, thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to have you on. This is a topic, and these sorts of things that you're doing are stuff that really interest Jimmy and I, and things that we've dabbled in both in like a spiritual setting with guided with shaman and stuff like that, and then other areas of kind of dabbling and recreational and those sorts of things. So we're really excited to have you on and talk about what you got going on. If you could just give us kind of like a quick little background about who you are, where you've been, what you're doing, and what you got going on, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I've been working with ibogaine for the past 10 years now. I'm an anthropologist by training, also have a background in chemistry. Was a chemistry grad student until I experienced psychedelics myself and decided that I didn't want to do animal research anymore. So I completely switched fields and went into anthropology, kind of skipping through psychology on the way. What's the rest of the question there?
Just kind of like what you got going on with your work with ibogaine, and then kind of want to get into some more specific questions about that.
Yeah. So the main thing I've done with ibogaine is to do an observational outcome study, which was funded by MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And that study has actually been done for several years now. I finished the data collection back in 2012, and Dr. Ken Alper and I co-authored the first scientific paper out of the data from that study back in April of 2017. So that's been done for a while, and in the meantime, I've been working on a few other things related to the data. So my main interest with it is what role does the psychedelic effect or the psychoactivity of ibogaine play in its therapeutic action. So that's what I've been looking at for the past couple of years. And just last December or January, I co-authored a paper with Dr. Jeff Noller, who's kind of my counterpart in New Zealand. He's also an anthropologist and did his own outcome study, very much modeled after the study that I did in Mexico, and also with my wife as a co-author. So the three of us published a paper that looked at the psychological transformation and the psychospiritual transformation that people undergo when they're getting ibogaine for opioid use disorder or for opioid addiction.
And so for the folks that are listening that may not be aware, what is ibogaine and what are its origins, and what sort of things why are people going to Mexico and these places